She gasped. "Go deeper." "Like you mean it." But he growled, "Careful, darling. I'm not stopping till…" Before starting the story, don't forget to like and share the video to fulfill your wish complete, and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. The air in the abandoned warehouse was thick with dust and the faint scent of oil and mildew. She stepped lightly, her boots echoing softly against the cracked concrete floor, and the dim light from the hanging bulbs flickered, threatening to go out at any moment. Her heart thudded with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She had never been anywhere like this before, and the thrill of the unknown tugged at her every nerve. She paused mid-step, her eyes catching a glint of metal hidden under a pile of broken crates. Something about it drew her in, a strange sense of familiarity that she couldn't quite place. Reaching cautiously, she brushed the dust away, revealing a small, intricate key with markings she didn't recognize. A shiver ran down her spine. This key was clearly not ordinary. It promised secrets, and secrets had a way of changing everything. "Go deeper." "Like you mean it," she whispered to herself, almost a dare, almost a warning. The words barely left her lips before a shadow moved in the corner of her vision. He emerged silently, his presence dominating the room without a sound. Dark eyes narrowed, analyzing her every move, and for a moment she felt as if he could see straight through her, past the facade of confidence she had carefully built. "Careful, darling," he growled, his voice low and commanding. "I'm not stopping till we find what's hidden." The tension in the room was electric. She didn't know whether to trust him, and the uncertainty made her pulse spike. There was something compelling about him, the kind of danger that made the air feel heavier, charged with anticipation. She wanted to resist, wanted to assert control, but the key in her hand and the mystery it promised was far too tempting. As they ventured further into the warehouse, the space seemed to close in around them. Broken machinery leaned at precarious angles, shadows danced across the walls, and every corner seemed to whisper secrets. She realized the warehouse was not abandoned at all. Someone or something had been here recently. Footprints in the dust suggested movement, deliberate and calculated, and the sense of being watched prickled her nerves. Her mind raced. Who had left the key here, and why? And what did he know that she didn't? She wanted answers, and the thrill of the unknown was irresistible, even as danger lurked in every corner. The key felt heavier in her hand now, as if it were guiding her, compelling her to go deeper into this labyrinth of rusted steel and shadows. She could feel her instincts screaming, a mix of caution and curiosity battling for control. He noticed the hesitation in her eyes. "The deeper we go, the closer we get," he said, almost a warning, almost a promise. His tone suggested he had been here before, that he knew what lay ahead, and yet he wouldn't reveal the truth. That ambiguity both terrified and intrigued her. She realized that whatever lay at the end of this path was not just a secret, it was a test of courage, of wit, and of trust. Every step forward heightened the suspense. The warehouse became more than just a physical space. It was a maze of anticipation, of potential danger, and of unspoken tension. The key in her hand pulsed with significance, a small but powerful symbol of the journey that was about to unfold. And as she took a deep breath, steeling herself, she knew that nothing would ever be the same once they discovered what was hidden in the shadows. This moment, the discovery of the key, the charged presence of her enigmatic companion, and the looming mystery of the warehouse set the stage for everything that would follow. The inciting moment had arrived, gripping her with both fear and excitement, forcing her to choose whether to step back into safety or dive headfirst into the unknown. The deeper they moved into the warehouse, the darker it became. The weak overhead lights flickered erratically, casting jagged shadows that danced across the walls and floors. Every creak of rusted metal, every distant drip of water made her startle. Her nerves stretched taut like the string of a bow. The key in her hand had begun to feel less like an object and more like a guide, pulling her towards something she couldn't yet see, but couldn't resist. He stayed close, silent yet commanding, his presence a constant reminder of danger and protection all at once. Every so often he would glance at her, those dark eyes sharp and unreadable, as if testing her resolve. She wanted to protest, to assert control, but the truth was undeniable. She needed him. She needed someone who could navigate this labyrinth of shadows, someone who could anticipate the trap she couldn't yet sense. The first trap revealed itself subtly, a thin wire stretched across the floor, nearly invisible in the dim light. Her foot almost caught it, and a metallic click echoed through the warehouse. He froze instantly, hand shooting out to catch her wrist before she could stumble. The intensity in his eyes made her pulse quicken. "Careful," he warned, his voice low, deliberate, carrying a weight that made her stomach twist with both fear and something darker, more thrilling. "This place isn't forgiving." As they advanced, the warehouse seemed to shift around them. Piles of crates became obstacles, shadows became hiding places, and the sense of being watched grew stronger. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was tracking their every move. Each step forward heightened her senses. The smell of damp metal, the distant scraping of machinery, even the faint whisper of air moving through broken vents, it all became part of a nerve-jangling symphony of tension. He moved with a calculated confidence, seemingly knowing where danger might lurk before it appeared. Yet every so often he would pause, his gaze scanning areas she hadn't even noticed, muscles tensed as if anticipating an attack. She noticed the way his jaw tightened whenever they approached particularly unstable piles of debris, how his body subtly shifted to shield her from unseen threats. She realized that trusting him wasn't a choice, it was a necessity. Suddenly, a faint glow appeared at the far end of the warehouse, bouncing off a wall like a beacon in the darkness. The key vibrated slightly in her hand, as if urging her toward it. "That's it," she murmured, her voice almost a whisper to herself, though he heard her. He didn't respond immediately, letting the tension build, letting her feel the weight of the moment. Then, slowly, deliberately, he nodded. "We're close," he said. But one wrong step and it could all end. Her pulse raced, every nerve alive with adrenaline. The tension between them was palpable, a mix of fear, anticipation, and an unspoken connection that made each glance and touch feel electric. She tried to steady her breathing, tried to think logically, but the warehouse had other plans. Every shadow seemed alive, every creak and groan a reminder that they were not alone. As they approached the glow, the sense of imminent danger grew almost unbearable. She realized that the warehouse was a puzzle designed to test them, to push them further than they might willingly go. And yet, there was no turning back. The lure of the unknown, the promise of discovery, and the presence of the enigmatic man at her side compelled her forward. Every heartbeat, every cautious step, drove them deeper into the tension, into the suspense, into the unknown. By the time they reached the source of the light, her nerves were taut, her senses razor-sharp, and her anticipation nearly unbearable. The rising tension of the warehouse, the shifting shadows, the hidden dangers, the electric dynamic between them had reached its peak. She knew the next moment could change everything. One misstep, one wrong decision, and the world they thought they understood would shatter. The key pulsed again in her hand, almost as if it were alive, as if it knew the path they had chosen and the risks they were taking. And as she looked at him, she realized that nothing, not fear, not danger, not uncertainty, would stop her from going deeper. The glow they had been following pulsed faintly ahead, revealing a narrow corridor hidden behind a stack of rusted machinery. It smelled of iron and decay, and the air felt heavier, almost suffocating, as if the space itself was aware of their presence. Every step they took seemed to echo louder than the last, and she could feel her pulse hammering in her ears. He led the way with unshakable confidence, but she noticed his movements had changed, slightly more cautious, more deliberate. Something about the corridor didn't sit right with him, and the tension in his body made her uneasy. Her instincts screamed danger, but curiosity burned hotter. She tightened her grip on the key, feeling it vibrate faintly, almost like a heartbeat sensed to her own. Then, the first real obstacle appeared, a floor panel, cracked and rotted, stretching across the width of the corridor. One wrong step would send them plunging into darkness below. She froze, instincts warring with curiosity. He noticed immediately, stopping beside her, his gaze sharp. "This isn't just a corridor," he warned. "It's a trap. One misstep, and it's over." Her hand shook, but she forced herself to focus. They had come too far to turn back now. She remembered his words from before, the promise of moving deeper, the thrill of risk, and she steeled herself, taking a calculated step forward. The panel groaned under her weight, sending a jolt of fear through her spine, but it held. One by one, she navigated the treacherous section, each careful footfall echoing like a countdown. Once past the trap, the tension didn't lessen. The corridor twisted unnaturally, shadows stretching into shapes that seemed almost alive. She caught glimpses of movement at the edge of her vision, fleeting hints that they were not alone. The sense of being watched intensified, making every sound, every shadow, a potential threat. She wanted to turn, to flee back into the familiar light, but the key pulsed insistently in her hand, urging her onward. He stayed close, a silent protector and guide, but she could sense his own vigilance. His eyes scanned every shadow, every corner, every unstable surface. "Stay close," he murmured, not as a command, but as a warning. The proximity of his presence was both reassuring and nerve-wracking. The unspoken tension between them heightened every second, making the stakes feel almost unbearable. Suddenly, the walls seemed to close in, and a mechanical hiss echoed through the corridor. A trapdoor swung open above them, releasing a cascade of debris that clattered around their feet. She barely dodged a falling beam, her heart leaping into her throat. He moved instinctively, pulling her back just in time, his grip firm, unwavering. "Not stopping now," he muttered, his voice low, almost a growl, matching the intensity of the moment. The obstacles kept coming, sharp edges, hidden pits, and unstable surfaces designed to test both courage and composure. Each one forced them to rely on each other more, to trust instincts and timing. She realized that navigating this maze wasn't just about survival. It was about proving to herself that she could face the unknown, that she could go deeper than fear allowed. And then, the real challenge emerged. A locked door at the end of the corridor, reinforced with metal and marked with strange symbols that glowed faintly under the dim light. The key in her hand vibrated violently, almost as if it recognized the lock. Her pulse raced. This was it, the obstacle that would determine everything. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and all the progress, all the risk, could be undone. He stepped closer, his eyes dark and unreadable. "This is where it gets real," he said, his tone tense, warning and promise wrapped in one. She knew he wasn't bluffing. Whatever lay behind that door was not ordinary, and reaching it safely meant navigating both the physical and emotional labyrinth. They had entered together. She took a deep breath, gripping the key tightly. The obstacle had been set. The challenge was undeniable. And the real test, the one that would push her to the edge, was only just beginning. The locked door loomed before them, cold metal etched with cryptic symbols that pulsed faintly, as though alive. The warehouse behind them seemed to vanish into shadows, leaving only the narrow corridor and the weight of the unknown pressing in from all sides. She felt the key thrum in her hand, almost like it had a heartbeat of its own, urging her forward, but now tinged with warning. He studied the door silently, jaw tight, fingers brushing over the symbols as though deciphering a secret only he could read. "This isn't just a lock," he murmured, his voice low, carrying the same edge of danger that had followed them from the first step. "It's a test. And it's going to tell us more than we want to know." Her stomach twisted. She had expected traps, obstacles, even danger, but she hadn't anticipated revelation. There was a weight to his words, a hint that whatever lay behind this door might change everything they thought they knew. The pulse of the key seemed to quicken in response, vibrating in sync with her rising heartbeat. She swallowed hard and glanced at him. For the first time, she saw hesitation flicker across his face, a shadow beneath his otherwise unreadable exterior. The revelation came in an instant. As the key slid into the lock, the door shuddered, then swung open to reveal a room bathed in a strange, ethereal glow. Inside were rows of glass cases, each containing objects she couldn't immediately comprehend, artifacts that seemed ancient, powerful, and dangerous. But what struck her more than the objects was the unmistakable sense that this place had been waiting for them, as though it had been designed specifically for this moment. Then she noticed a figure in the corner of the room, partially hidden, watching them with an intensity that made her blood run cold. "Who's there?" she demanded, stepping forward, but the figure didn't move. He remained silent, a shadow among shadows. Yet the sense of awareness was unmistakable. He stepped protectively in front of her, hand brushing hers as they reached for the key together. The proximity was electric, and though she tried to focus on the danger, a flicker of something unspoken passed between them: trust, tension, and an undeniable connection forged in the crucible of their journey. The figure finally stepped forward, revealing a face that neither of them expected. Recognition hit her like a physical blow. Someone she had thought long gone, or perhaps never truly known, stood there, holding knowledge that could unravel everything. Her mind raced. The key, the traps, the warehouse, it wasn't just about discovery. It was about choices, allegiance, and secrets buried deep in the past. He sensed her shock immediately, dark eyes locking onto hers. "This changes everything," he said, his tone almost a growl, warning her that the rules had shifted. She realized in that moment that the warehouse, the obstacles, and even the key had been a prelude. The true challenge was not survival, not danger, but understanding the truth and deciding what to do with it. As the tension in the room spiked, the sense of impending action became almost unbearable. The figure stepped closer, and the glow from the artifacts flickered as if reacting to their presence. She could feel the key vibrate, the pulse almost frantic, urging her to act, to choose, to move forward or retreat. Every instinct screamed caution, yet curiosity burned hotter. The revelation had changed the stakes. What had started as a journey through shadows and traps was now a test of courage, trust, and intellect. The warehouse had drawn them here not just to uncover secrets, but to confront truths that could redefine their lives. And in that moment, she knew, the turning point had arrived. The choices they made in the next few seconds would determine whether they walked away unscathed or whether the mysteries of the warehouse and the enigmatic figure before them would consume everything: the pulse of the key, the intensity in his gaze, and the presence of the watcher coalesced into a singular electric moment. They were no longer merely adventurers navigating danger. They were participants in a story that demanded bravery, cunning, and absolute focus. The turning point wasn't just about discovery. It was about transformation. The room seemed to contract around them, every shadow and flickering light amplifying the intensity of the moment. The artifacts glowed brighter as if sensing the tension, casting strange, shifting patterns across the walls. Her pulse raced, each beat a drum echoing through her chest. She gripped the key tighter, its vibration now almost frantic, as if warning her that the critical moment had arrived. The figure in the corner stepped forward, revealing a determined, almost predatory expression. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, voice sharp, cutting through the tension like a knife. The words weren't just a warning, they were a challenge. And suddenly, the warehouse no longer felt like a place to explore. It felt like a battlefield, the stakes far higher than she had anticipated. He moved instinctively, placing himself between her and the newcomer. Every muscle in his body was coiled, ready to spring. "We finish this together," he said, his tone low and intense. The words sent a jolt through her, both a reassurance and a warning. The electricity in the room was palpable, every glance, every movement carrying weight beyond the physical dot. Then the first trap triggered. A hidden mechanism behind one of the cases snapped, sending a row of glass cylinders toppling toward them. She dove instinctively, rolling out of the way just in time, but one shattered near her feet, sending shards scattering across the floor. The sound cracked through the room like gunfire, and the figure's eyes narrowed. "Not fast enough," he said, a dangerous edge in his voice. The battle escalated quickly. Shadows seemed to twist and pulse around them, the very space conspiring to separate or trap them. She darted between crates and artifacts, heart hammering, muscles straining, as he covered her, anticipating the next danger before it appeared. Every second felt stretched, elongated, as though time itself had slowed to magnify every heartbeat. Every decision, every movement the figure lunged, and he intercepted, a collision of force that rattled the floor beneath them. Sparks flew as metal scraped against metal, and for a moment, the warehouse was filled only with the sound of struggle and her own ragged breathing. She realized that the climax wasn't just a physical confrontation, it was a test of strategy, trust, and intuition. Every choice mattered, and one misstep could be fatal. She spotted the lock on the central artifact pulsing with a brighter glow the key. It was their chance, the leverage that could shift the balance of power. With a deep breath, she dashed forward, heart hammering, key trembling in her hand. He covered her as she slid the key into place, the mechanism clicking audibly, releasing a surge of energy that rippled through the room. The energy wave forced everyone to their knees, scattering debris and sending light flashing across the walls. When it subsided, the figure in the corner froze, caught off guard by what they had activated. It was the opening they needed, the turning of the tide, and she could see the resolve in his eyes, the shared understanding that this moment would decide everything. Together, they pressed forward, using the energy of the artifact to create space and force the figure back. Every movement was precise, calculated, and tense, the stakes higher than ever. She could feel the culmination of every danger, every obstacle, every step they had taken leading to this exact moment. Finally, with a final surge of effort, the figure was contained, trapped behind a barrier of light that shimmered with the power of the artifact. The room's glow dimmed, leaving them standing amidst the aftermath scattered debris, glowing artifacts, and the still tingling energy of the climax. She sank to her knees, exhausted, the key cool and steady in her hand now. He stood beside her, protective but alert, and their eyes met, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. The climax had passed, but its impact lingered emotionally, physically, and in the very air around them. They had survived, but more importantly, they had reached the apex of the journey where risk, trust, and courage had converged into one electrifying moment of triumph. Warehouse felt almost silent after the chaos of the climax. The glowing artifacts dimmed to a soft, steady light, casting long shadows that now seemed calm rather than threatening. Her chest heaved with exhaustion, every muscle trembling from the adrenaline that had surged through her moments ago. The key, once pulsing with energy, now rested quietly in her hand, cool and unassuming, a reminder that the greatest danger had passed. He stood beside her, eyes scanning the room one last time, alert and protective. The intensity that had dominated their journey lingered in his gaze. But now there was a hint of relief, an acknowledgement that they had survived what seemed impossible. She realized for the first time how much trust had been required to get this far. Every step, every trap, every heartbeat had demanded reliance on someone else, someone equally willing to risk everything. The figure they had confronted in the climax was gone contained, trapped by the artifact's power. Yet the memory of his presence lingered, a reminder that danger and intrigue never truly disappeared. The room, now calm, seemed to offer answers but also posed new questions. What were the artifacts? Who had left the traps? And why had the key called to her, seemingly aware of the path she would take? She looked at him, uncertainty and relief mingling in her gaze. "Is it over?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He shook his head slowly, a wry, almost imperceptible smile on his lips. "Over? Maybe. But nothing like this ever really ends." His words carried weight, but also a strange sense of possibility, like the tension and danger they had faced weren't just obstacles, but catalysts for growth, understanding, and change. She realized that the warehouse, the traps, the artifacts, and even the key had been more than just tests of courage. They were tests of character, trust, and resilience. Each moment of danger had forced them to confront fear, uncertainty, and their own limitations. And though the climax had passed, the lessons lingered, etched into their very instincts. Together, they walked toward the exit, the soft glow of the artifacts fading behind them. The warehouse, once a labyrinth of menace and mystery, now felt almost serene, its silence carrying the weight of what had transpired. She held the key carefully, knowing that it was both a symbol and a tool, a reminder that the journey had changed her and that the adventure was far from overdone. As they emerged into the night, the cool air felt almost unreal after the suffocating tension inside. Stars dotted the sky, indifferent to the trials they had faced, and yet she felt a strange sense of connection between herself, him, and the world that suddenly seemed bigger, deeper, and more unpredictable. He glanced at her, eyes softer now but still intense. "We did it," he said simply. "We survived. And we learned." There was an unspoken understanding that their journey had forged a bond neither had expected, a mix of respect, trust, and something unnameable that had grown stronger with every obstacle and every revelation. She nodded, feeling a mix of exhaustion, relief, and exhilaration. The tension that had dominated the warehouse had been replaced with clarity, the lessons learned etched into her memory. The key might have unlocked a door, but it had also unlocked something inside her: courage, determination, and the understanding that she was capable of far more than she had imagined. As they walked away, the warehouse receding into darkness behind them, she knew that the story wasn't truly over. There would be more challenges, more mysteries, and more moments that would test them. But for now, they had reached the resolution, the calm after the storm, the reward after the trials, and the understanding that they could face whatever came next together. The key rested in her hand, quiet and unassuming, yet charged with potential. And as she glanced at him, she realized that the real adventure had only just begun.